to episode number 019 of Something Else with Arya and not KJ. I am Arya and I'm here. It is Wednesday, January 4th. It's 10:30 a.m. I had something to do with this morning after the show ended. But Wrestle Kingdom 17 is in the books, and I'm here to tell you all about it. And as warning, this is going to be one of those shows that either I'm done in 30 minutes or it's going to be like 2 hours long because this was a show. This is actually the first Wrestle Kingdom I watched live in 3 years since 2020, and Naito with the winning the world and the Intercontinental title on the same night. Um, in many ways, 2 nights of Wrestle Kingdom just didn't work, and we're back to one night here. And I mean, I'm not counting, they do that extra bonus Wrestle Kingdom show, later on in the month. I don't really count that. Like when I think about Wrestle Kingdom, I think about the Tokyo Dome at January 4th. And something about the 2 nights just didn't work. Like it was a way to get more big matches on the show, but at the same time, they still only had like 7 or 8 big matches, and they just split them up into 2 nights. So your undercard was mostly all of your 6 and 8 man and 10 man tags that you see on every show. And the show the shows were special by the main events, but they weren't so much special when you watch the undercards. With that said, I'll tell you in advance here, going into the show, I was not as excited as used to be for these shows. And it's partially due to the fact that I am not a Jay White fan. I accept that he is a exceptional wrestler and he does a great job in the ring. I honestly just find him boring. And I'm sorry, but him defending the world title in the main event just it wasn't something that made me jump for joy when it became super obvious that's where the direction was going. On top of that, you have Tanahashi and Naito in a 6 man tag, which is Keiji Muto's last match in New Japan. But it was such a waste of Tanahashi and Naito. And there are so many people like that you could have done Tanahashi and Naito in a singles match, and you could have found, 2 other people to be in that tag team match. You know, I'm sure it would not have been impossible to find 2 other guys to put in that match, because Lord knows when we'll get to it, but that match wasn't exactly setting the world on fire, even with Tanahashi and Naito in it. So pull up New Japan World, and I should state for the record, zero problems with the stream all nights. And I remember a couple of years ago, 2020, there was, I think, like the second match on night 2. I had to go back and rewatch the show over again to rewatch the match because, like, the stream just died, for everyone. But, this, like, literally, there wasn't even any buffering during the night. And maybe that means there weren't that many people watching it, or at least not as many as used to be. I prefer to be the eternal optimist and say that, well, maybe New Japan, increased its bandwidth, got better people working on that streaming. And yeah, my only complaint about the streaming was that back in the day, they used to do all these wacky commercials before the show would start. They'd be like Jushin Liger as a police officer. And I think they were just like, you know, videos that they air during New Japan shows to basically tell the fans behave or we'll throw you out kind of thing. But they were still really fun to watch, and they don't do those anymore. They just gave you the black screen that said New Japan World, the show will start shortly. Gino Gambino was back doing commentary, and he never did get his Bullet Club tracksuit. And during the show, they were talking about how there are over 25,000 people. The final attendance that they announced towards the end of the main event was 26,085. Obviously, not the sellout of a few years ago when they were doing 40,000, both nights, but it is more than they did the last 2 years combined, they said. Show started with a 3-minute exhibition match. It was the professional wrestling debut of Bolton Oleg, and he was taking on Rihohei Oiwa. I probably butchered that one, but Oleg in his professional debut. His first match is here at Wrestle Kingdom in front of 25,000 people. No pressure. So this was essentially a training session in front of a live crowd. They exchanged some holds. Oleg had some nice amateur throws, and the finish was Oleg getting a 2 count with a body slam before the bell rang to end the exhibition. And I can tell you, from people who remember my article that I wrote last year, and also when KJ and I talked about it here on the show a few months ago, when I went to do my training in wrestling, I had my 3 training sessions. In case you're curious, it was not in front of 25,000 people. It was in front of like 12 people, and that was embarrassing enough. All right, so up next, we had the New Japan Rambo, and this, unfortunately, is where the show began to nosedive for me. And maybe a lot of people will tell you differently. Maybe a lot of people love this match. I am a big fan of the annual New Japan Rambo. I was not a fan of this one. And this one, the rules look toward the last couple of years, where the final four will go to New Year's Dash to wrestle for the provisional King of Pro Wrestling 2023 championship that they'll defend throughout the entire year. Number one was Show. Number two was Hikaleo. I should note that unlike prior years, the pre-show guys just came down the ramp like normal instead of the side aisles to the dugout and everything. The eliminations, by the way, were over the top rope to the floor, pinfall or submission. Hikaleo eliminated himself in the first 30 seconds in by stepping over the top rope and onto the floor, and nobody noticed except me, or just nobody cared enough because they just ignored it and kept going. Number three was Evil with Dick Togo. It still is just amazing to me that during my little mental health crisis a few years ago, Evil went ahead and won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. Four was Tomohiro Ishii. Not a whole lot to talk about. Ishii went face to face with Hikaleo, well, face to navel, before they teamed up on Show briefly. Number five was Great Okan. No one was in a hurry to get to the ring, and by the time Okan got to the ring, it was pretty much time for the next person. And actually, he didn't even get in the ring until the next number came up. Number six was Doki. He was in a hurry. He ran to the ring, fired off a Hurricanrana and a springboard back elbow right away. Ishii almost got rid of Evil, but Togo was there to make the save. Seven was Rocky Romero, which explained why Rocky wasn't doing commentary with Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton and Gino Gambino. And Evil ended up being the first person officially eliminated after both Rocky and Doki ran into him. Eight was Kenta, power walking to the ring. He went after Ishii. Nine was Yoshinobu Kanemaru. He was drinking whiskey on the way to the ring. The way this match was going, he may have had the best idea. 10 was Aaron Hanare. Ishii and Hanare exchanged blows mid-ring. And I should point out, while I'm going through this, in case I forget, in case you're not sure, in case, it's going over your head, the New Japan Rambo is basically their version of the Royal Rumble, but it's basically the pre-show of all these shows, and it's for the lower card guys mostly, and they usually throw in a few legends. And I mean, it's a battle royal, but this match, it was almost impossible to figure out who was still in the match because everyone was just outside the ring for the most part. Like they'd have two or three guys in the ring doing a spot, someone maybe laying in the corner, and everyone else would just be milling around outside the ring. Yano comes out later, and I'm not even convinced that until they got to the end of the match that he ever did anything. In fact, when I think back, I don't even think he did anything. Like not offensive, not defensive. I remember him selling, but I don't remember him ever actually taking a move. I think I mentioned Aaron Hanare was number 10. Vehement Ishii exchanged blows. Ryusuke Taguchi was number 11. Okan kept breaking up Ishii's pin attempts. And then Hanare and Okan eliminated Ishii. Number 12 was Jeff Cobb. And this is where the announcers are pointing out that they have no clue how many people are in this match. And the time between the entrants keeps changing. Chris Charlton said it's supposed to be about a minute, but sometimes it certainly was not a minute. Um, and this is where I mentioned, by the way, that most people are just standing outside the ring. Hanare eliminated both Doki and Kanemaru. Shane Haste was number 13. He went for a dynamic bomb on Rocky, who turned it into a Hurricanrana. Mikey Nichols was 14. How did TMDK manage to get these back-to-back spots? I call shenanigans. Rocky tried to walk the ropes, but Nichols knocked them out and eliminated him. Taguchi was the first person that actually got pinned during this match to get eliminated. Everyone else has been going over the top rope. 15 was Yujiro Takahashi. Cobb and Okan double teamed on Hikuleo and clotheslined him out for the elimination. At least this one counted. Apparently he, got to do double eliminations. 16 was Toru Yano. Wouldn't be a Rambo without Yano. TMDK eliminated Cobb, and then Haste got bumped out of the ring. Hanare and Okan dumped Nichols. Yano, like I mentioned here, Yano gets bumped outside the ring, but we don't see how. And for the life of me, I don't think he actually did anything during the entire match. And it's Yano. And you know what you're getting with Yano. He comes to the ring, it's a comedy kind of guy, and it's fun to watch. Well, I guess you have to wait for New Year's Dash. Oh, yeah, because spoiler alert, he is one of the final four. El Fantasma was 17. Aaron Hanare is on the apron, and ELP, El Fantasma, grabs Hanare's nipples, and Hanare fell out from selling. Taichi without Miho Abe was number 18, and all that did was made this match even worse without the sweet, beautiful Miho Abe. I guess our Lord Taichi did not feel like we were worthy enough to be graced by her presence here for the Rambo. Taichi, of course, the only man who can sing without his lips moving. Shingo Takagi was number 19, and they determined that, since they usually have the most recent King of Pro Wrestling champion as the last entrant, that Shingo Takagi must be the last entrant, and it turned out that he was. We did get the battle with him and Taichi. Bullet Club and the House of Torture teamed up, and Shingo assisted throughout Taichi. Yano finally got in the ring. Shingo sent Yujiro and Kenta flying. We were down to the final five, which was Fantasmo, Shingo, Okan, Sho, and Yano. And I believe Okan was like outside the ring, just hiding for the majority of this. Like I said, this thing was horribly disorganized. Shingo threw ELP out, but Phantasmo pulled a Kofi Kingston and landed on the guardrail. The announcers were making jokes about Kofi. Yujiro and Kenta helped him to get to the apron. Sho then accidentally eliminated Phantasmo, and we got our final four. Shingo Takagi, Sho, Toru Yano, and Great Okan do battle tomorrow for the provisional King of Pro Wrestling 2023 title. I'm almost positive it has to be better than the match we just saw. The Antonio Inoki Memorial six-man tag team match was up next. And actually, before this, they had a lovely woman out there announcing that they had a TV show, and there was a online vote where the most popular show voted for will get renewed for another season. And basically, she was out there begging everyone to go vote for her show. I I was begging for a return of that weird ass anime thing from like 5 or 6 years ago. So anyway, Antonio Inoki Memorial Six-Man Tag, Yuji Nagata, Satoshi Kojima, and Toge Makabe versus Tiger Mask, Minoru Suzuki, and Tatsumi Fujinami. My neighbors are incredibly happy because I did not scream Kaze ni Nair at 2:20 in the morning because they didn't play it. They came, They came out to the Antonio Inoki Bamba Yi song. Nagata, like, I forget the last time I saw him. I think he was in Impact last year, but he has aged since whenever his last match was that I saw him in. Tiger Tori came out of retirement for one more match, and everyone came out with red towels for tribute to Inoki, including Tiger. The combined age of the 7 men in this match was 408 years old. Yes, just under an average age of 60. I think that's like 58 and a half. So yeah, that is the match that we got here. Fujinami and Nagata started, and they were fun working together. Minoru tagged in, and the pace definitely picked up. Then when the 69-year-old Fujinami was in the match, the Suzuki team got the heat on Nagata. I don't think Fujinami took a bump in this match, except when he was doing the Dragon Screw leg whip to people. But he did look fine, all things considered. Kojima tagged in and gave Minoru the machine gun chops, but Suzuki just begged for more. Makabe finally got in, and Fujinami gave him a Dragon Screw leg whip, and then gave one to Nagata Kojima. The three heels locked on a triple submission, but they all just kind of let go. Mask and Makabe messed up a spot bad, and it was basically the finish, which they then messed up again. They're supposed to do a roll up, and like basically Tiger Mask fell down, and Makabe fell down on top of him, and that was the pin. Fujinami bowed to each side of the crowd and cut a promo, wishing the fans a happy new year and thanked everyone for being a part of the Antonio Inoki Memorial. They did announce that an Antonio Inoki movie was in the works. And then we go to the main show. Junior tag team title on the line to start. Francesco Akira and TJP versus Leo Rush and Yo. Leo Rush retired halfway down the ramp and then unretired after he got in the ring. Not even Topanga at this point believes his retirements anymore. Rush and Yo both ran across the ring for a dive, and Rush stopped and cheered Yo on to do it himself. Perkins and Rush fought up the ramp. Akira followed, and they gave Rush an alley-oop facebuster on the ramp. Maybe Rush now can sell his injury for an entire year before getting healthy at Wrestle Kingdom 18. On the apron, TJP had Akira on his shoulders and tossed him onto Yo on the floor in a creative spot. Rush was wearing the Crimson Mask. He cut himself on, the metal ramp, but he did crawl and drag himself into the ring. Rush got the hot tag and showed why he is so great when he's not retiring. He hit the final hour on Akira, but Perkins broke it up. We got a great series of finishes and kickouts. The faces hit 3K on TJP, but Akira shoved Rush into the pile to break it up. And after all these great moves, Perkins reversed the move and won with a small package. I will say that of all the matches in this show, this one was about as good as I expected going in, and we're going to find out quickly that is that's not the case with a lot of these matches. Kairi was out next to defend the IWGP Women's Championship versus Tam Nakano. Kairi had a cool ring entrance with two Grim Reapers doing a dance, and it was noted that this was the first one-on-one women's match in the Tokyo Dome since November 20th, 1994 at an All Japan Women's show. Kairi teased a clean break on the ropes and instead punched Tam in the stomach. Kairi was, shall we say, rougher in this match than she ever was in WWE. She was a bit more aggressive than she ever was there. Tam did a dive from the top rope to the floor and hit a beautiful German suplex in the ring for a near fall. This match had its rough points. I'm not fairly familiar with Tam Nakano, but it might have just been the pressure of being on such a huge match, on a huge show. But I felt this match didn't work. They had some great moves. Tam hit a Scott Steiner-esque screwdriver for a 2 count. Kairi hit a nasty looking spinning back fist that sent Tam's head into the eighth row, and Kyrie hit the insane elbow for the pin. The match went 5 minutes, maybe. I think it was a little more after the 5 minute call. And the match wasn't as good as you probably expect it to be. All right, so FTR versus Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi. Oh, wait. You want to know what happened after the women's match? Okay. So the lights go out and you get a big video package. And of course, we get the debut of Sasha Banks going under the name Mercedes Moné. Her hair was blonde, red, blue, and black. Kevin Kelly called this the worst kept secret in wrestling. She was in her wrestling gear and kind of teased that they're going to do some sort of impromptu match. And I got to say, physically and aesthetically, she looked fantastic. They shook hands, but Mercedes dropped her with it was a screwy looking move. She like picked her up kind of like a gory special, but they both just kind of fell down. And that's when I noticed Sasha was wearing these big block chunky heels, which I own many of, and I can tell you that when wearing them, at no point do I ever sit and think, man, I really want to do wrestling moves while wearing these. Sasha did take the microphone, Mercedes, and announced that she's here to make some more history. She's the history, the conversation, the blueprint, and the CEO of the women's division. She told Kyrie that she would take her title at Battle in the Valley in San Jose, saying you can bank on Moné. So then we got FTR versus Bishamon, Yoshihashi, and Hiroki Goto for the IWGP Tag Team titles. And I don't know why Cash was the only person with this issue, but Cash had an awful series of flight delays, and he didn't even get to the Tokyo Dome until 30 minutes before the show even started. And I imagine there was legitimate worry that he wasn't actually going to make it. And this was one of those matches where it's like, I I don't want to tell anyone to stay home and miss their bookings, but it's like this was not the best FTR match ever. And it might be because, Cash just had that, the long, long trip to get here. I believe they said later on that, they had two flight cancellations and he had to drive 7 hours just to get to an airport with a plane that would take off to Tokyo. Cash, he did what he could here, and they tried. I think one of the issues is that every and this happened, later on too, where it's like everyone kind of knows what the finish is, and it's kind of hard to get into. And to be honest, when FTR came out, before they even talked about the issues, I'm like, why are those two so pissed off? Like they were like if they weren't actually pissed off, they're great actors. Because I've seen FTR wrestle now for like a decade, and it's like I've never sat here and thought when they came out that they were just pissed off. This was not their night. Cash the suicide dive of all things. FTR did the powerplex to Goto. Goto busted his lip at some point. I think they might have kneed him in the mouth. FTR got the heat on Goto, who hit the Ushigoroshi before making the hot tag to Yoshihashi. Bishamon kept going for their finish, but it would get broken up every time they could hit. Before they could hit it. FTR hit the big rig, but it got broken up. Cash and Yoshi suplexed each other over the top rope to the floor. Dax kept going for a pile driver, but on the third try, Goto headbutted him. Dax finally hit it on Yoshihashi, which the fans actually bought as the finish, but it was a kick out. An FTR spike pile driver on Yoshihashi had the fall broken up by Goto. And finally, Bishamon hit Shoto on Dax for the pin. So in about 3 weeks, FTR lost all three of their titles. World Television Championship on the line. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Ren Narita. I will say that for the limitations of this match, because there are obviously a lot of limitations when you announce that every TV title match is a 15-minute time limit. It's one thing to just have an ambiguous time limit and the match just happens to go 12 or 13 minutes, you know, but it's another thing when it is a 15-minute match, it's hard to, have a great match. And I did think that all things considered, this was about as good of a match as you're going to get in a 15-minute type of match like this. And that's not to say that I like, you can't have great all-time classic 15-minute matches. But I think a big part of it is to say that's the time limit and you're going to stick to it. Um, it takes it down a bit here. They did announce that if this match goes the distance, we would get a rematch at a later date. So they cleared up that little loophole there. We started with a Greco-Roman knuckle lock where Zach just started kicking at the hips of Narita. So Ren, being a nice guy he is, returned the favor. Zach worked the arm, including stomping on it. Ren did battle back with a nice double underhook suplex. They exchanged seated kicks to the back, including at one point them just allowing each other to kick each other. And I know it's wrestling, you're allowing this like in general, but like literally, they would sit down and tell the other person to kick them in the back. And they were both nice enough to do it to each other. That was followed by trading running boots to the face. Zach at one point just started using Ren as a kicking bag, kicking the poor fellow all over his body, daring him to get back to his feet. And when he did, he kicked Zach right in the face. Saber locked on an armbar, and Ren stomped on his face to break it up. Saber almost won with a roll up, but Ren kicked out. They traded Cobra Twist, and finally, we had a finish pretty much out of nowhere. Like they built up Narita having his arm worked on the whole match, but still the finish came fast and furious. Narita went for a leg lock, but left his left arm exposed. Saber grabbed it and put on an armbar, and Narita had to tap out. Mikey Haste and Shane Nichols came out to give ZSJ a TMDK shirt. Zach teased not joining, but eventually he decided to join. So he's the newest member of TMDK. I guess, now that Jonah got tired of being the bodyguard for Haste and Nichols, he was ZSJ. By the way, I like the title belt, the TV title belt, but it is a bit too clunky in my opinion for someone to wear it. It's like it did not look right when Saber tried to wear it here after the match. Never Openweight Championship, Carl Anderson versus Tama Tonga, who had Jado in his corner. They tried everything they could to make you believe that Carl Anderson was leaving with the title. And this match was actually a match that was better than I expected, but I had very low expectations for this one. Carl laid out Tama before the match started with the belt. He booted him off the apron and gave him a fisherman buster on the guardrail, the railings there. He dragged Tama Tonga up the ramp, laid him out with a sit-up pile driver. Tonga did block a gun stun attempt on the ramp, and they both made it into the ring. Tama went for a gun stun on the apron, which is the hardest part of the ring, but Carl blocked that. This was a hard-hitting match. Both men are exchanging heavy shots. Carl went for a brainbuster from the top rope, but Tama blocked it and shoved Carl off before hitting a diving crossbody. Tama hit the Supreme Flow for a near fall. They both kept trying for the gun stun, but it kept being reversed. Tama finally hit it coming off the middle rope, and then they did a screwed up gun stun for the pin. It was so screwed up that Kevin Kelly was in the middle of calling it and stopped because I assume he figured that they would just redo it. Because like Carl Anderson bumped way too early for that, and it hurt a match that was pretty decent up to that point. And Tama Tonga got the pin. Kevin Kelly, like I said, wasn't even sure whether or not to call it until after they already counted three, because it just like, yeah. So that was that. yeah, the WWE part of the Forbidden Door is now closed again, and Tama Tonga is the never openweight champion. Alrighty, six-man tag. Keiji Muto, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Shota Umino versus LIJ, Tetsuya Naito, Sanada, and Bushi. Chono and Liger are on the Japanese commentary for this. And I believe this is the first Keiji Muto match I've ever seen. And I mean, I've seen countless great Muta matches, but I think this is the first Keiji Muto match I've actually watched. Um, this match, I'm sorry, was a waste. Um, and for those who are listening who may not know this or may never watch New Japan, when Tetsuya Naito was in an unimportant match, and you'll see this on a lot of the touring events where most of the card is just, large tag team matches there to set up the next big show. Naito will wrestle in a t-shirt. And it's not to say that the person, Tetsuya Naito, uh, doesn't care for the match. It's that the character, Tetsuya Naito, doesn't care about this and is putting forth less effort. And this match was all about LIJ, Los Ingobernables de Japón, putting in less effort. Sanada started with Muto, and the first move of the match was Sanada doing a drop kick to Muto's knees. Sanada actually hit a moonsault in the first 45 seconds, but Muto did kick out. By the way, rematch from the main event of Bound for Glory 2014 in Tokyo right here. Sanada went up for a moonsault, but Tanahashi had to remind him that his knees are so messed up. Weird spot, I thought. You would think like someone would cut him off instead of having his partner tell him not to do it. Now, LIJ got the heat on Tanahashi, and even then it was all about Muto just standing there on the apron. Shota tagged in, and we eventually got a triple submission on LIJ. But like the six-man of the pre-show, no one tapped, and the moves all just kind of stopped and broke up. This was a six-man tag you would see on a tour event, on a road to the Tokyo Dome or whatever, as it would probably even be the main event. And the only reason why this match was on this card and up this high in the card is because it was Muto's last New Japan match. And to be perfectly honest, it would have been better off had they been more like Liger's last match. I don't remember if it was his last match or next last match, but the one where they basically did a big 8-man tag. And I mean, you don't have to bring back, the legends of wrestling for it. Like you could have had Umino, you could have had Sanada, Bushi, bring in a couple other guys. And, it didn't have to be, Tanahashi and Naito. And I'm sure, both Tanahashi and Naito, were honored to be in Muto's last New Japan match. And, I'm sure both Tanahashi and Naito were happy to have a low impact match. But this was not the match to have at Wrestle Kingdom, especially when with these stars of Tanahashi and Naito. I was hoping you would get a big important match. Like, yeah, it was Muto's last match. It was all about Muto, but you'd still have Tanahashi pulling out of the stops, Naito pulling out of the stops, Sanada, Bushi, Umino pulling out of the stops. This was nothing. I'm sorry, this was a waste of time, especially this late in the show, especially given the talent level of everybody involved. And Umino won with a Death Rider on Bushi, and that was that. Like Tanahashi never went for the high fly flow. Naito never went for the Destino. Like this was a waste of two of your biggest talents in the company. And again, I understand this match was not about them. This match was about Muto. But again, there were 19 people in that New Japan Rambo, and there were a lot of wrestlers on New Japan and ancillary who weren't on this show at all. You're telling me that you couldn't have done a little bit of mixing and matching or whatever and had a six man with Muto where you had the people who may barely get on the show or may not have been on the show. You know, this match did not have to happen with, Tanahashi and Naito. Heck, this match could have been a tag team match with Muda and Umino versus Sonata and Bushi. It's like, they get the heat on Shota. KJ tags in, does his, can full of moves that he can do. Shota still gets the pin. He can still pin Bushi with the Death Rider. Like literally, that is like, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of like belaboring this, but this year is my 10th, quote unquote, my 10th anniversary of being a New Japan fan. The first show I ever watched was Wrestle Kingdom 7, January 4th, 2013, with Akebono in the opener and Low Ki getting fired for wrestling in a suit. And the first time I saw Prince Devitt or Finn Balor's, demon entrance, it had the first Tanahashi Okada Tokyo Dome match, and I was hooked. And now to see Tanahashi in such a throwaway match on the biggest show of the year, and to see Naito, like literally, I know he got in the match, but I seriously can't tell you a thing Naito did. And that's just plain ridiculous, for this match, for his level of star to be in that match. So at this point, this show was in the toilet for me. And like the only thing that really kept me going was the fact there were only three matches left. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. I just watched, you know, going on 4 hours already. Actually, I think it was closer to like 5:20, 5:30. So this show, which started at 1:20 with that exhibition match, was going on for 4 hours. I've watched nine matches. And the best match I could say at that point was ZSJ versus Ren Narita in a match that was as good as you could do under the limitations of the match. Everything else was, with the exception of the junior tag match, everything else was not as good as I expected or just plain bad. And you know, this is this is where the show turned around. And we'll talk about it at the end, but you start wondering how gone can a show be and still get saved? Well, the next three matches did their absolute best to save it. First, we got Taiji Ishimori, Hiromu Takahashi, Master Wato, and El Desperado for Taiji Ishimori's junior heavyweight title. And this was where also we were starting to get to the point where like I thought I was watching Nitro for a minute because suddenly during the match, during the cruiserweight match, Chris Charlton announces that there is an altercation backstage that Tetsuya Naito was involved in, but he couldn't say anything else at this moment. The match started fine, but didn't pick up until the challengers noticed Ishimori was sitting on the ramp, and we got a series of spots where the challengers all accidentally laid each other out on the ramp. They teased all of them being counted out, complete with Taiji hitting an Asai moonsault, all three on the floor. Obviously, it did not end in a count out. We got a dive sequence by all four, finishing with Hiromu diving from the post to the floor. They went all out here. They hit big move after big move in the ring, and the crowd took forever to embrace this. But once they did, they really embraced it. And that was pretty much the story of the show here. It might have taken a while for the crowd to get into some of these matches, but once they did, they loved them. And it came out that the stable called Congo from Noah approached Los Ingobernables in the back, and there was a fight, but said that you'd have to go to the New Japan YouTube channel after the show to watch what happened. I did not do that, and I am not planning on doing it. Um, and I think it's kind of ridiculous that on the biggest show of the year, you have this angle and you got to interrupt a world title match, a junior heavyweight title match, so you could tell people all about it, taking the focus away from this. And it was another bad decision in my opinion during the show. Wado had the match won, but he let Taiji up on a roll up. Desperado hit an Angel's Wings, but Hiromu got out of it out of it, uh, and hit a time bomb for a near fall. Wado, I'm assuming this is his finisher. I haven't seen too many Master Wado matches, but as soon as his finisher, he went for a double underhook and turned it into like a crucifix roll up. But Ishimori yanked the ref out of the ring. Taiji hit Master Wado with a chair. Wado hit his move on Taiji, but that got broken up. And finally, Hiromu hit the Time Bomb 2 on Master Wado. He got the pin, and Hiromu Takahashi, after 1 year after losing to Desperado at Wrestle Kingdom 16, beats Wado this year, gets the junior heavyweight title, and we'll see what goes from here. Just a fantastic 4-star match. I was a little worried ahead of time about this match going on so late, and in some ways, maybe it should have gone in the middle of the show to like get some energy into the crowd at some point. However, it was perfect in some ways because then we got this nice sequence of 3 matches to end the show. U.S. title match: Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega. Don Callis joined the English announce table, and Gino Gambino disappeared. I don't know if he just went to the back or if he was still sitting there. And we find out that they do have room for 4 announcers with 4 headsets, but Gino, if he was there, didn't say a word during this match. Tanahashi, by the way, joined the Japanese announce table. Don said Omega got in the best shape of his life. He lost almost 4 pounds for this match. And this match was insane. I know that there are a lot of people out there who don't like Kenny Omega. And odds are you're not going to like this match. If you're one of those people, and I love Jim Cornette, but if you're Jim Cornette, or if you're someone who, whether or not you actually agree with him or you're just spitting out what he says, if you're someone who's not going to ever say that Omega has a good match, don't watch this match because, you're not going to be happy. But this match, like, I thought was fantastic. I think, this was, you could close voting right now for match of the year. And I can say that if this match doesn't win match of the year, we are in for one hell of a great year of wrestling. This match, far and away, match of the night, match of the show. You know, I can't imagine, people picking any other match, honestly. Osprey, let's see here. So Omega shoves Osprey off the apron right at the start of the match. Osprey crashes into the barricade. The match started slow, and in the key move of the match, 3 minutes in, Omega takes the corner pad off of the turnbuckles. And of course, Omega takes a little bit to take it off, proving that Toru Yano makes this look way too easy. Osprey goes back first in the exposed corner. He dove into an octopus at one point, and they collapsed. And the announcers did try to sell as part of the strategy, and that was the only messed up spot of the match. Osprey went for the Os cutter on the apron, but Omega hung onto the ropes. You could hear someone trying to get a "you effed up" chant started, but that was definitely not a botch. That was supposed to happen. Omega brings out a table and laid it across Osprey and did a double foot stomp onto it and threw it. Osprey fired up and gave Omega a suplex onto the metal frame of the table, and he had a sky twister press onto the floor. At some point, Omega picked up the table and did the "Here's Johnny" routine from what you call it. That you'll if you haven't seen that meme yet online, you have been looking very hard. Um, let's see here. Omega blocked another Oscutter attempt and laid out the champ with a fisherman buster on the knee. Omega went for a top rope dragon suplex, but Ospreay landed on his feet and did a twisting splash and another Oscutter for a 2 count. They ended up back on the top rope, and somehow, and this is the turning point of the match, Omega hits a DDT on the top exposed turnbuckle. ZSJ is gushing, ZSJ. Will Ospreay is gushing blood at this point. United Empire, who are at ringside, ran over to check on their leader, who, like I said, was wearing the crimson mask. Omega hit the Terminator dive and set up what was left of the table across the railing and smashed Ospreay's head through it. And this started the point where the kickouts weren't so much kickouts as much as Ospreay just like barely turning his body just enough so his shoulder got off the mat. They did tease stopping the match a few times. Omega went to the top and Ospreay stumbled into the ropes, crotching him. Ospreay fought off his exhaustion and his pain and his injury. He fought to the top rope, and as soon as he did, Omega dropped him right on the top turnbuckle. Omega hit a V-trigger to the back of the head and a German suplex from the top rope, but Ospreay kicked out of that. Ospreay fought back, hit 2 hidden blades and an Oscutter from the top for a 2 count. He hit a Styles Clash. Finally, Omega primed him for his death blow. He held his arms out, basically telling you he's going to give you a V trigger right here. Will Ospreay spat in Kenny Omega's face and cursed him out. So Kenny hit him with that V trigger, hit the one-winged angel, and picked up the pin, won the United States title. It's like, I don't know if this was supposed to be a double turn, but this was a double turn. Will Ospreay came out of this a gigantic babyface. Kenny Omega came out of this a gigantic heel. This was one of a kind. This was, I think, Omega's second singles match since, he left on his injury for his hiatus after he lost the belt to Hangman. Like, he wrestled one match on Dark a few weeks ago, and that was it. So you have a guy who's been doing 6-man tags for a couple months versus one of the best wrestlers of the past couple years through the pandemic. And these two just went out there and had a classic match. And no matter what Dave Meltzer's rating is going to be, there's going to be people who did not watch this match who complain and whine and moan. Please take my word for it. Whatever Dave gives it is probably worth it. This match was just fantastic. And there's no amount of whining and moaning because Omega won, or whining and moaning because you don't like the way he moves, or because 15 years ago he wrestled a sex doll, or whatever the heck else. Yeah, whatever other reasons we have for hating the guy. And if you want to hate the guy, fine, hate the guy. But you can hate the guy and admit that the match was freaking great. Even if you want to give all the credit to Ospreay, and Ospreay deserves a lot of freaking credit because he did an amazing job selling, especially when like that blood is pouring down his face or the blood's caked on there, and he looked like an entirely different person at one point. Like, that's how much blood was all over him and how well he was selling. And this guy, if he's still a heel after this, he's horribly miscast. Main event time. IWGP Championship, Switchblade Jay White with Gato in his corner versus the winner of the G1, the Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada. Rocky Romero came out for the main event. White started the match by having the crowd chant for Okada. After the last match, it took a long time for this crowd to wake back up for this match. And admittedly, they were cheering, but they weren't like, this still wasn't the pre-pandemic cheering, but there was still the sense of just, you know, this crowd was tired at this point. They saw a bad show until two fantastic matches back to back, and one being a match of the year. And now we have a third main event right in a row. And it took a while for them to get into this. White just beat on Okada early on. He would beat him down and he would keep yelling two, 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 almost like he was Mr. Wrestling 2 going for the knee lift. But as soon as Okada would stand up, he would give Okada a chop to knock him down and yell, "Sweet!" Okada developed a pretty nice looking bruise there on his chest. They ended up on the apron and Gedo tried to interfere, but Okada laid both of them out with the DDT. White took back over and continued to mock the crowd. About 18 minutes in, they began teasing finishers. And like again, the crowd is still just dead at this point. Gedo jumped on the apron to prevent a dive, but he got punched in the face, and Okada hit a flipping senton off the top rope. I honestly, Gedo gets hit so many times in these matches. I could see why nobody really cared because it happens all the time. Okada hit a top rope elbow, and we got the Okada pose. You know, the one I'm talking about. Okada kept punching White and went for a Rainmaker, but White spat in his face, ducked the Rainmaker, and kicked Okada. White hit a Regal Plex and a Bloody Sunday. Okada kept avoiding the Blade Runner. He finally hit the Rainmaker. He picked him up and hit a second Rainmaker. He picked him up and went for a third, but White ducked that one. He got drop kicked, hit with a tombstone, but White hit the Blade Runner for the nearest of near falls, and that was when the crowd finally woke up. White hit his own Rainmaker, which Gino called the J Maker, and he did the Okada pose, and the camera even zoomed out for him. Okada blocked a Blade Runner, hit another Rainmaker for a 2 count. They reversed some finishers back and forth. Okada hit White with a Blade Runner of his own, the Cobra Flosion, and hit his fourth Rainmaker for the win, for the pin and the win. This was a fine match. In fact, it was a very good match. It was a great match, but it was impossible for them to follow Ospreay and Omega. And in my opinion, the match I saw 3 years ago with them at Madison Square Garden was better than this, but it was still a great main event. After the match, White was sitting in the corner, clutching onto the main event, or clutching onto the championship belt before finally giving it up. White pulled himself up and put his arm around Okada before breaking away and walking off. And then after the match, Shingo Takagi came out, congratulated Okada, and basically said that he wanted the first title match and vowed to have the KOPW title going into the match. All right, so that's the end of the show. And beginning to end, it was just under 6 hours. And if all you do is watch the last 2 hours, the last three matches of the show, you're going to walk away thinking this was an incredible show. In fact, you may watch the entire 6 hours and still think that it was an incredible show. However, this is where I'm conflicted because at what point does a show have to be so bad that even having 3, 4+ star matches, including a match of the year candidate, can't dig it out of the hole that it was in? And maybe that doesn't exist. Maybe, no matter how bad a show can be, if you put on 3 matches like that, you can't say it was a bad show. But I would say that first 4 hours, it was not Wrestle Kingdom. That first 4 hours, you could have called it Dominion, you could have called it Dontaku, you could have called it whatever you wanted to call it, but it was not Wrestle Kingdom. This was a very blah show, and you can watch much better wrestling almost every single week on TV multiple times for free. And, you won't see matches like, Omega and Osprey on free TV every week, but you will see matches better than the first 4 hours of this show on Dynamite tonight. I can almost guarantee that. And that show's for free. And I stayed up till 1 o'clock in the morning and spent 6 hours and $8 to watch this one. So overall for Wrestle Kingdom, I don't know. It's like I can't even give it a thumbs in the middle because again, the last three matches. But I can't even give it a thumbs up because first nine matches. I mean, I can't even tell you what to do. I'd recommend it. I'm a completist, so and that's my issue. So me, I'd have to watch the entire show to fully appreciate the last three matches. If you're someone who can just watch the last three matches and be happy, by all means, do not let me stop you. But that's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back again next week. And until then, have a great rest of your week, my friends.